Hello everyone, welcome to our presentation. This is Group 3 with Angel Valenzuela and Fu Huing for the course Managing the Cloud Infrastructure. In our present today, we are going to talk about some of the security challenges with cloud computing. Our group research on different types of security challenges and finally narrows our focus on the following four challenges: insider threat, insufficient identity, credential access and key management, misconfiguration, and the use of weak password. The first challenge that I'm going to talk about is the insider threat. So insider threats are users who have access to an organization access such as cloud tenant, network system, application, or data, and use their access unintentionally or maliciously to cause harm to the business. The Carnegie Mellon University Software Engineering Institute defined insider threat as the potential for an individual who has or had authorized access to an organization access to use their access, either maliciously or intentionally, to act in a way that could negatively affect the organization. Regardless whether it's malicious or unintentional, I think we can categorize the insider threat into maybe 5 different types. So they can be malicious insiders, such as employees or contractors who misuse their legitimate access for personal gain. And another type of insider threat can be insider agents who are recruited by external parties to steal, alter, or destroy confidential data. The third type of insider threat can be an emotional employee who seeks to cause harm to the organization as revenge for something that he or she perceives strongly. And another type of insider threat is reckless employee or contractor who neglect the rule of the company's security policy and procedure. And the last type of insider threat that our research finds the third-party vendor who take advantage of their access to compromise the security of confidential information. So according to our research, the insider threat have cost organizations tons of money and time. Here are some of the key findings from the 2020 Cost of Insider Threat Global Report that conducted by Ponemon Institute on 204 organizations in North America, that including the US, Canada, Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Asia Pacific. So the report found that across all the insider threat type, both the frequency and cost of insider threat have increased dramatically from year 2018 to 2020. The overall cost of insider threat is rising with a 31% increase from 8.76 million in 2018 to 11.45 million in 2020. And in addition, the number of incidents had increased by a shocking 47% in just 2 years from 2018 to 2020. That with a total of 4,716 incidents. So over a 12-month period from the same report, out of that 204 companies, throughout the years, the total number of incidents is 4,716 with an average cost of $11.45 million. And out of that 4,716 incidents, 62% were caused by negligent insider, 23% are criminal insider, and 14% are user credential theft. So the report found that negligent insider occur most frequently, but the credential theft with an annual cost of $2.79 million is the costliest because the cost per incident almost triple when this type of incident happened. And some other interesting key that the report found is that it takes an average of 77 days to contain each insider threat incident, and only 13% of incidents were contained in less than 30 days, and 60% of the organization had more than 30 incidents per year. The next type of security challenge I'm going to talk about is insufficient identity, credential, access, and key management. So identity, credential, access, and management system refer to policy and tool that companies use to manage, monitor, and secure access to valuable resources. Some example of those valuable resources can be electronic files, computer system, and physical resources such as server room and building. This challenge is not necessarily a new challenge, but it has become more significant with the cloud due to its complexity. And security incident and data breach can occur due to the following: inadequate protection of credentials, lack of regular automatic rotation of cryptographic keys, password, and certificates, lack of scalable identity, credential, and access management system, and failure to yield multi-factor authentication. Well, the impact that this type of security challenges can cause is, the malicious actor, with insufficient identity, a malicious actor can read, exfiltrate, modify, and delete the data, and he or she can issue control plan and management function, snoop on data in transit, or release malicious software that look like it come from a legitimate source. To illustrate how these security challenges can, cause tremendous problem to company, I'm gonna give you two live example. One for the Tesla that happened in year 2018. What happened was that there was an angry employee named Martin Tripp who wrote code to the Tesla manufacturing operating system under the Ford username and export gigabytes of data, including confidential photographs and video of Tesla manufacturing operating system. Now, this is a typical insider threat. So in the lawsuit filed by Tesla, the company believed that Tripp was triggered to steal the information in May 17, 2018, after he was reassigned to a different role. And the next case is an insufficient identity, credential, access, and key management case. This happened to Dow Jones in February 2019. So in February 2019, Dow Jones risk screening watch list was exposed publicly in a major data breach. It was discovered by Bob Diachenko, a security expert. So he found a copy of the watch list on a public AWS hosted Elasticsearch. And this watch list had 2,400,000 records containing the identity of government officials, politicians, and people who have political influences in all the country in the world. Now, this data breach couldn't have happened if the authorized third party have set a password protection to the AWS hosted Elasticsearch, but he forgot to do it. That's how the thing happened.
So, our next security challenge we're going to cover is security misconfigurations. A security misconfiguration are security controls that are inaccurately configured or left insecure, putting your systems and data at risk. It sounds pretty straightforward, so here are some examples. A security misconfiguration can range anywhere from forgetting to disable a default platform function to unauthorized users failing to establish security for a database. Security misconfigurations can happen at any level of an application. It includes the web server, database, application server, the platform, custom code, and framework. According to Microsoft, Cybersecurity breaches can now globally cost up to $5 billion per year, with an average breach costing about $3.8 million for a business. So, when do misconfigurations occur? Misconfigurations can occur when the system changes, so going from one thing to another, or when new equipment is brought into the network. For example, you just upgraded to the new Cisco firewall. You're all excited, you added all the static routes, you set up all your VLANs, and you set up the necessary IPs, but you forgot to change the default password, leading it to be insecure due to a misconfiguration error. Another example could be if you were to switch systems, let's say from Windows to Linux. You're not too familiar with the command line and the permissions, and somehow you give the permissions to the wrong user. This would also be an example of a misconfiguration. A misconfiguration can also happen if you have flexible rules. Take, for example, an administrator that allows configuration changes for troubleshooting purposes, but they forget to revert the changes after. Or it could be employees temporarily disabling their antivirus to install certain installers and other products and forgetting to re-enable it after. If you had the right security protocols installed, the user wouldn't be able to do this. Next, we'll move on to a real-life example of a misconfiguration error occurring recently. This error occurred with Pfizer, the same Pfizer that's providing all the vaccines for millions of Americans. Yeah, that one. So, what happened? So, back in October of 2020, Pfizer had been compromised. It seems that Pfizer failed to secure one of its Google Cloud storage buckets, and this resulted in a massive data leak. Lots of information was leaked, such as confidential medical information, full names, home addresses, and email addresses. So, during our research in regards to this example, we found that the misconfigured bucket was undiscovered for years, and all throughout that time it was unsecured and unencrypted. And even more recently, in February of 2021, according to Healthcare IT News, that stolen data from back in October ended up being leaked online, and authorities right now are currently investigating where it was leaked from. So, how can we prevent these misconfigurations? Well, the first way that we can prevent these misconfigurations would be to hire qualified candidates. These would be experts in their field who have been properly trained. A qualified candidate would probably be one who's received extensive training and or has knowledge dealing with this particular field. The next way we can prevent misconfigurations is by having ongoing training. Ongoing training is good because it keeps you up to date with the latest best practices and information for your field. Finally, the most important way, in my opinion, to help prevent misconfigurations is through automation. Automation has a ton of benefits besides cutting down on misconfiguration errors. This thing could probably be its own topic to be covered in a whole semester. Automation can prevent or at least minimize the human error if it's set up correctly. The repetitive tasks are easy to automate because they are often easy for people to do. However, when a task is repetitive, the person doing it again and again can get complacent, and this gives more room for error as compared to when it's automated. So, the final security challenge we have for this presentation is weak passwords. So, what's considered a weak password? A weak password would be considered anything that's short, anything that's commonly used, a system default, or something that can be easily guessed. Something like admin admin, password 1 or 1234, something along those lines. A good recommendation we have is to enforce a strong password policy. What this means is that we wouldn't let any weak passwords in or any passwords based on a dictionary to be allowed as a password. So next up we have the 10 most common passwords for 2020 according to nordpass.com. So if you see your password on the screen, I do recommend changing it. So next up we have how we can prevent weak passwords. First on the list is 2FA. 2FA is two-factor authentication. 2FA is an extra layer of security used to make sure that people trying to get access to an online account are who they say they are. First, most likely the user will enter their username and then their password. Then, after, they will be required to provide another piece of information. This second factor probably would come from one of the following. It can either come from, something which would be like a PIN number, a password, or answers to some secret questions, or it could even be some kind of specific pattern. It can also be something you have. So typically a user would probably have like a credit card, like put in the number, or it could be like the cell phone, like a smartphone, or a small hardware token. So for example, here at Cal Poly Pomona, we use Duo, but at some places they use the Microsoft Authenticator. At some jobs like my own, we use a hardware-based 2FA that's it's called a YubiKey. It's like a small device that fits in a USB port and it also supports NFC connections. Another way to stay secure is with biometrics, so this includes fingerprint scanners, facial recognition scans. I know some computers have them built in, others don't. You could buy like a separate device if you want that. Next on the list, we have using characters of 10 or more. We also have using symbols and a mixture of letters and numbers. Using all these things, it'll help prevent weak passwords. Now, you're probably all wondering who would ever put a weak password on something so important? And with that, we look to Deep Social. So, who is Deep Social? Deep Social was a data broker who was scraping public social media profiles for information without knowledge or consent from the host companies. The reason I say was is because in 2018, Deep Social was banned from Facebook and Instagram, and this led the company to shut down its operations. The data leak, which contains copies of about 235 million social media profiles from TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, was discovered by security researcher Bob Diachenko from Comprotech on August 1st. So, how was it exposed? According to my research, it was an unprotected database, meaning this thing had no password, and this is just as bad as a weak password. He discovered 3 identical copies of the exposed database online while investigating. The data contained the profile name, the real name, profile photos, account description, and whether the profile belongs to a business or a person. The database had also collected statistics about follower engagement rate, number of followers, growth rate, audience gender, audience age, audience location, the amount of likes, and the gender. This does conclude our presentation. We would like to thank you for listening to us on our presentation on security challenges in the cloud. And now we will be taking some questions if you have any.